Hello and welcome. This is a podcast explaining Ukraine by UkraineWorld.org. We continue our podcasts about the war which Russia started against Ukraine. This series is brought to you by Internews Ukraine and Ukraine Crisis Media Center, two Ukrainian media NGOs. My name is Volodymyr Yermolenko. I am editor-in-chief of UkraineWorld.org. We are making this podcast with Tetyana Ogarkova, who is in charge of international outreach at Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Hello, Tanya.
Hello, Volodya.
Before we start, let me remind you that you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/UkraineWorld. So we continue our series about the war. You probably hear the air sirens. And for us, Ukrainians, it became a kind of a very habitual situation to leave to work under the air sirens. So we will try to make this episode despite this. We are going to talk about the atrocities which we are living through, and primarily the city of Mariupol. We want to draw attention of everybody in the world to this city, to its tragic history right now. I would like to first quote Oleksandr Sushko, my colleague, who wrote on Twitter recently that Mariupol is Srebrenica and Aleppo in one city. So the genocide, huge genocide against civilians, and extermination of people, and destruction of the city itself. What would you say?
Yes, indeed. For more than 2 weeks already, this is maybe the most tragic city in the Ukrainian territory. We know that Mariupol has a very important not only symbolic but strategic significance for Russian Federation, because on one side it has been after Russian aggression in Donbass, and after parts of these territories were occupied back in 2014-15, Mariupol was free. Mariupol belonged to Ukraine, and during all these years we were testimony kind of Ukrainian renaissance in the city. I remember visiting Mariupol back in 2015. It was kind of frontier city, very close to the war, but at the same time not belonging to these new so-called republics. And during all these years, I remember a huge number of cultural initiatives, of any kind of cultural projects linked to Mariupol, because Ukraine did everything possible to make this city like a symbolic gesture, symbolic city for Russians, for occupied territory, saying, look, this is city which is also Donetsk region, this big city, and look what does life looks like when it is Ukrainian. And I remember President Zelensky, when he came in power, he built a road, real road to Mariupol, and there were a lot of international events as well during these last years. So Mariupol was like a forepost of Ukraine in the eastern Ukraine. But for Russia, they need Mariupol because the army is approaching from two sides, from the east, from occupied territories and Russia territory, and on the other side from southwest, from Crimea, all these divisions of Russian army who come from there. And they need Mariupol just to make this access, to create this access from Russian Federation to Crimea. That's why they are there, and they're trying to do everything possible to take the city. But the problem is that the Ukrainian army was present at that time during the start of this attack there, and they started defending the city. But the problem is that they are surrounded, and Russian aviation started bombarding city. And what we know as for now, it's between maybe 90% of buildings are destroyed, or at least are touched in the city. There is for 2 weeks already, there is no water, no food, no electricity, almost no internet. There is one place, as journalists report, one place in the city where you can capture internet, but it is in constant sharing, and no heating. So this is like a city in ruins, and people, they live in the underground. And for 2 weeks, there were no evacuations at all, because Russian army was against any kind of evacuation. But during last days, we've seen several evacuations started with people were able to leave with their private cars, and at that very moment when we are talking, the approximate number of inhabitants of Mariupol who were succeeded to leave is about 40,000, maybe something like 40,000 for a city which has 400,000 people, so 10% of the population. And we still don't know the exact number of victims, but we've seen images from the inside of Mariupol and these collective tombs. I mean, people are buried everywhere, and a lot of people died. Thousands of people died already. Nobody knows the exact number.
Several days ago, there was a number, 2,000 people, something bigger than 2,000 people, but we heard Petro Andrushenko, who is the advisor to the mayor, who's saying that the number is actually much, much higher, and he even called the figure 20,000 people. And what we see in the images, you can go to our YouTube, UkraineWorld YouTube, and we recently published a video, Save Mariupol, in which you can see the footages, the horrible footages of the city practically destroyed. So from what we see from the witnesses, they're saying that probably 80% of buildings are in this or other way touched by the shellings. And let me just read one of the posts of a person who escaped Mariupol. She's a woman, and we've seen the English translation on Twitter by Roman Sheremeta. A few just fragments. You can go to Roman Sheremeta Twitter account to get the full post, but just a few fragments out of it. There is no connection in the city, no water, no gas, no ambulances. People with torn limbs bleed in their yards and no one can help them. These are peaceful people, our acquaintances and relatives. The dead are simply being covered by soil where they lay. We collected snow, warmed it on a campfire and cooked macaroni. My family was in the bomb shelter of high school number 2. 3 days ago, a shell flew there and shattered some of the windows. A woman was wounded in her hip. She laid all night on the first floor of the high school, asking for someone to give her poison so that she would not feel the pain. There was no one to take her to the hospital. Every day and every night there are fire shots, whistles, shaking walls and horror. Where will it hit? Doctors from hospital number 3, the part that survived, work heroically. They perform surgeries, they save people. The woman with the wounded hip was taken by the Red Cross within a day. I pray for her to survive. 2 shells flew into our building and 2 into our yard. There are almost no shelters in the city left, no bunkers with ventilation. At best, people hide in basements. My mom's building doesn't have a basement. People need to be taken out, women, children, elderly people. Give us buses, a green corridor, make an arrangement. There is no food, no medicine. When there will be no snow, people won't be able to go out for water. Pharmacies, grocery stores, everything is either looted or burned. The dead are not taken out. The police recommends to open the windows and put the corpses on the balcony. And there are other fragments like this, so you can, I don't know if we can imagine what is happening. Right
we
there,
cannot imagine. And we also have some personal links to the city. I personally know one journalist. Her name is Yulia Garkusha. She's maybe something like 40 years old, maybe 30-something or 40 years old. We met several times in Kiev. And I also know her son, Nestor, who is something between 4 and 5 years old. And I contacted her several weeks ago because we had some common projects and fixers with international media. I was present in Mariupol, etc., etc. And then one day in the beginning of March, I wrote her and I got no reply. I was not worried because I think that I thought that they will be able anyway to go out of the city. But several days ago, her ex-husband published a video. You've probably seen this video. This is the only video I know from the underground of this dramatic theater, from this bomb shelter. And he was asking in Facebook, people who know my ex-wife, can you confirm that she's here on this very second? I looked at this video and I'm 99% sure it was Yula. And other people were commenting saying, yes, we were able to recognize her son. So what we know that she was in this underground on this video just before the bomb arrived. Yeah.
So let us remind that Russians shelled heavily the drama theater, a big building where thousands of people were looking for shelter. And they knew actually that these people are there. Before the bombing, we have seen even the post by RIA Novosti, which is a Russian propaganda channel, news agency, saying that Azov battalion is hiding in this building. Azov, one of the battalions which are defending the city, heroically defending the city. So we know that in the foreign press there is still this nightmare propaganda about neo-Nazi in Ukraine. You should
be skeptical about that.
Should be skeptical about that. You should understand that these people are defending the city against the real Nazis, who is the Russian army. And this RIA Novosti just published a news, according to its information, that Azov battalion is making a headquarters there, and this is kind of a indication that they will strike this drama theater. Because what is important now, they are saying it's not Russians, of course. They are saying that it is Azov battalion itself who is bombed the drama theater. But obviously, we hope that nobody believes them. We had the news that some of the people from this underground drama theater have been evacuated after the strike, and that bomb shelter has survived the strike. But it still seems that hundreds of people are still there.
Yeah, to tell the exact numbers, what we know from media, from official sources, that about 150, something like that, 130 persons alive were able to go out. But according to official resources, there were more than 1,000 inside, so 1,300, something like that. And so we can imagine that. And then special services and soldiers were not able to evacuate people from the underground because of shellings, because Russian army continued to shell this place. So it's impossible. Can you imagine the horror these people in the underground are living for 2 days already because they are unable to go out of this trap? And at the same time, we can imagine that there is maybe no electricity, nothing at all in the underground. So I cannot even imagine what's happening there in the minutes we are talking about that. And we do pray that something could happen, a miracle could happen just to save these people, because we know, and what you can see on the videos, there are a lot of children inside. There were a lot of children inside, and even newborn children. So there is no name for such a cruelty, for such an inhumane behavior of Russians. And when they're talking about genocide, about this genocide like something they were accusing Ukrainians, what they do in Mariupol, I have no other word just to name what they are doing there. They're just trying to exterminate, to kill everybody, to kill every single person, every single civilian, every single baby who is inside the city. So they're not distinguishing between military, Azov battalion and women and kids, etc., etc. So this is something which is quite simply impossible.
We have the interceptions of Russian soldiers exchanging information between themselves and saying, quote, I don't give a fuck about the civilians there. We're going to shoot anyway. And there were lots of photos you probably have seen in the internet that seeing from the skies down to this drama theater in Mariupol, you could see big inscription, children, дети, in Russian. Mm-hmm. Which was supposed to give a sign to those bombers that there are children inside, but they didn't care. They bombed anyway. So this is the situation. We have seen also the recently address one of the Ukrainian fighters, who is, I think, the head of the Mariupol police, who was calling President Zelensky to provide anti-air systems to Mariupol. The problem is that Mariupol is cut from the other Ukrainian army, but this is kind of also a call of despair of all Ukrainians about the anti-air systems, about closing the sky, at least on some territories, at least on such territories as Mariupol, who continue to be cruelly, inhumanely shelled by the Russians. And as you said, there were several attempts to provide humanitarian corridors. They were shelled and bombed by Russians. I think that there was success in the past days. So, as you said, 40,000. Yeah, is it true? 40,000 people left.
40,000 people left. They were going to Berdyansk normally, and then to other cities in central Ukraine. I've read several days ago a testimony of one family, a very devastating story, heartbreaking story about that they took their private car. They still had their private car. They were starting to moving, and after Mariupol, their car was bombed, was shelled, was bombed. There was kind of bombing, and the car was damaged. And they couldn't move any further, so they left all baggages, everything they had inside the car, and they just walked until the first village, and then they were able to escape. I cannot imagine such a sorrow just to leave your city. There is nothing left in your city, nothing left from your house. You have no things, no even baggages. You have nothing at all. And you are happy that you are alive. I imagine so that in coming weeks, let's hope that at least somebody from Mariupol will survive and will be able to go out. So what is urgent? It is to create any kind of humanitarian aid, because there are people who are traumatized to an extent we cannot imagine, just to help them with everything, with financing, with find a place to live, find doctors, I don't know, psychologists, everything, because you cannot imagine this experience when you live for weeks without any kind of civilization and you are bombed at every minute. So this is something people are traumatized for years, I imagine. So we are to create foundations and to find and to create any kind of solution for these people.
And at the same time, the Russians are cheering yesterday, the anniversary of the occupation of Crimea. They already use this Z letter on every occasion. It's for me it's a mixture of absurdity and comicness, because they put this Z letter, which is, if you add another Z letter, you will have a Nazi swastika, and they're still saying that they are fighting against the Nazis.
And another maybe important thing to tell now is that Russians are doing whatever they can just to hide what they were doing in Mariupol. Let's talk about Victoria Roshina. Victoria Roshina, it's our colleague journalist from Hromadske, from the channel we were both working with you for several years. And she was in Berdyansk. In Berdyansk, she was making some article or some material about people from Mariupol who were successful enough to get out of the city. And what we know now is that she's imprisoned now by Russian FSB or something like that. The channel has no news from her for 2 or 3 days already, and there is an international alert, and we need all kind of pressure to try to get her out of this situation. She was working on the article about people from Mariupol. She was in Berdyansk making something like that. She is now in hands of Russians. If we cannot imagine what's happening with her, we do know that her last post on Facebook was about saying that I will never forgive Russia for what they are doing on our land. She was describing her journey. That time it was in central Ukraine. She saw some tanks, etc. She was lucky enough to escape, and so they are arresting journalists who are covering this situation about Mariupol, because I'm all convinced that Victoria was talking to people and they were telling the story of these of their city, of what was really going on in Mariupol.
Yes, and the Russians, the cynicism of Russians is that basically Putin started the war to protect the people in Donbass. The war was initially started as a special operation in Donbass, and he was saying that, look, I'm going to save Donbass from genocide from Ukrainians, because they were shelling, Donbass cities during 8 years, which was basically, he was referring to the war which Russia started. And of course, it was an artillery war, and maybe victims from both sides. So, but what he's doing now, he's just destroying Donbass cities. He doesn't care about Donbass citizens. He's destroying Mariupol, which is a big Donbass city. He's destroying Volnovakha, he's destroying Shasta, he's destroying Stanitsa Luhanska. He's basically killing the Donbass population, Donbass dwellers, people he was saying he would protect. That's the cynicism of the story of history. So this is the Russian logic. If they want to save somebody, they kill somebody, and this is what is happening. Okay, we will follow up the story, but please tell everybody this name, Mariupol, which is a Greek name, by the way, because it was a city of Greek settlers, and the name which means the city of Mary, and it was already reacted by Pope Francis, who said that this city is a martyr city. This is what's happening. And we have other Greek-named cities like Melitopol or some others in this part of Donbass, which is very rich in nationalities, in which there are Ukrainians, Crimean Tatars, Greeks, Serbs, Croatians, Germans, Russians, whatever else. So we ask you to spread this knowledge about Mariupol. Go to our Twitter, UkraineWorld, where we post a lot of videos so that you can see with your eyes UkraineWorld on Twitter, and go to our YouTube, UkraineWorld, and the video Save Mariupol, and you will also see lots of videos from there. This was a podcast explaining Ukraine. My name is Volodymyr Yermolenko. I'm chief editor of UkraineWorld.org, and I was joined by Tetyana Ogarkova, who is in charge of international communications at Ukraine Crisis Media Center. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/UkraineWorld. Follow us on any possible platform, SoundCloud, Facebook, Twitter, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Stay with us and stand with Ukraine.